Welcome everybody on this beautiful tropical evening, a normal April day. My name is Sarah Stevenson, and I'm very pleased and honored to be here tonight. I am the new executive director at Friends of the Wissahickon. Oh, it's 3 months almost to the day, and it has been a real joy, mostly because of the people here and the people that this group represents, our staff, our volunteers, our board, our visitors, the people that really care about this place. And we're gathered here because of our shared love for the Wissahickon. And those of you in this room know that, you keep that love alive, not just by dedication, but also by putting that care into action, which many of you do. And every trail that you see, every project that seems to happen kind of behind the scenes, many of you know that there's a lot of hands in that work. There's a lot of time and dedication and care, and it's done by people who show up not once, but again and again. And it's largely invisible work, but it's how we are able to share this place more easily with visitors, and it's how we make the park accessible and sustainable. And so that work is ever expanding. And, this is a big part of what we do. And a lot of you in this room are dedicated volunteers, but, it takes all of us together to work on this cause. And, if you've ever said to yourself, this place really matters to me. And I've talked to a few of you tonight who say, I love it here. I want to get more involved. Well, this is your rally cry. We want you to be our friend, okay? And that could look like attending these events and just getting to know the park a little more deeply and growing that love. It could be becoming a supporter, becoming a member, becoming a volunteer. All of this, are invitations to have you become a deeper part of helping make the Wissahickon a more healthy, accessible, and protected haven for the next generation. And so this park doesn't just benefit from our admiration, it survives on our commitment. And I will say that no one embodies commitment to the Wissahickon like our speaker here tonight, Dave Bauer.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
So I have a few facts here about Dave. He's been a long-time Wissahickon volunteer since the 1970s. Or visitor since the 1970s, and a volunteer since 1992. From 98 to 2016, he worked as the Volunteer and Stewardship Coordinator in the Wissahickon for Fairmount Park Commission and later Philadelphia Parks and Rec. He has led over 3,500 volunteer service days in the Wissahickon since 1995. It's incredible. It's incredible.
Thank you.
And currently he leads two of our very popular volunteer days with the Q team on Wednesdays and Sundays. And you are always welcome to join that effort. Just go to our website it's right up there where you can learn more about volunteering. We have a volunteer day coming up this Saturday as well to clean up Bell's Mill. There's always something around the corner. So if you're inspired to get involved, just check out the website. There's always something on the horizon. And I have been very fortunate to, switching back to Dave, to get to know Dave a little bit and look forward to so many more conversations. But what I've learned is, one of the things I've learned is how little I actually know about the Wissahickon. And it's been a gift these past 3 months to talk with volunteers, talk with Dave, talk with so many of you, and just have my mind blown by what more there is to learn about the Wissahickon. I mean, it's endless. And so that's part of why we're here tonight. And with that, I know we're all in for a treat, and I'll pass the mic to Dave.
Okay. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for coming out here. I can't believe it's August 15th already. Rick, you rolled your eyes. It's not August 15th? Oh, it's April 15th. I'm sorry. Okay. And we're going to finish up in time for those of you that need to get home and do your taxes tonight, if you haven't already done that. If you're hoping to get a long-winded, studious, academic lecture on Wissahickon postcards, you're in the wrong place. You might as well go back to the bar. We're going to have some fun tonight. And we're going to start with our first postcard view, which is my favorite. It is actually the most beautiful of all the Wissahickon postcards. It's not an antique postcard. Well, to some of the younger people in the room here, it would be. It's 1996, was published by the Philadelphia Art Museum, and it is a painting by James Peale. And a real interesting story about this guy. I looked him up, and he was born in 1749, passed away 1831, 1 year after he painted this. And in 1776, he joined the Continental Army and fought in a number of battles, including Brandywine and right up the road here in Germantown, the Battle of Germantown. So, yeah, so that's James Peale. And that was the painting is from 1830. The card is from 1976. And unfortunately, it goes downhill after that. We don't have any more famous artists. We do have some famous photographers coming up, so hold that thought. Most of the cards are going to be in this genre, where it's a picture that was sent to an artist, and then the artist added the color and sometimes the captions. And then we're also going to have a lot of cards with messages on there. And this is one of my favorite messages. Can everybody see that? It says, "How would you like to gallop up here?" And that was back in the day when there was a lot more horseback riding here. And I always wondered if the sender sent that to a person or to his horse. I don't know. And for Wissahickon postcard history, you really need to talk about postcard history in general. And believe it or not, there was a time when there were no postcards. But the earliest postcard, I happen to have a copy of the very first picture postcard ever made. And that's going to be on our next slide. And you'll find this hard to believe, I know, but I would never lie to you. Not often. This one goes back to the dawn of creation. And in the Garden of Eden, hard to believe, there was a photographer there that day. And they took a picture and they made it into the very first postcard ever. And there it is. So you're going to see tonight, I have other interests in postcards besides Wissahick, and we're going to throw some other things in there just for fun. But to get started about Wissahickon postcard history, you have to seriously think about postcard history. And when the first postcards were first invented, was in the mid 1800s, started in Europe and then eventually migrated to the United States. And what people were looking for was a cheap, easy way, especially a cheap way to send messages through the mail. Individuals to send a note through the mail without having to write a long letter and pay expensive postage rates. And businesses were looking for a way to put like their business card or like messages to their customers on the back of a cheap card and buy it for a penny and send it for a penny. So the first cards actually looked like this. And this was called the front of the card back in those days. And the card would be blank, and you would have to buy it from the government starting in 1873 in the United States, before that in Europe. And that's what it would look like if you wrote all over the back of the card. And right about in the center of that, you can see my favorite line in this particular card. It says, "Gee, I see Packards, Pierces, and 6 cylinders." This is from like 1908, and the guy's writing to his friend and telling him what the cars he saw. And this would be what the front would be like. You'd have to buy this from the government. It was illegal to publish these or sell them if you were a private printer. So you'd have to buy it from the government. It was called a penny postal, and it had real serious instructions on there. The space above is reserved for the postmark, and the space below is for the address only. And then you can put your message on the back. And if you look at this guy, whoever sent this, I think maybe they were looking in a mirror or something. They got the whole thing backwards, right? Don't most people write the address another way? Yeah, it starts out with Massachusetts, Boston, 311 Beacon Street, and then the person they were sending it to. But that was the old-fashioned postcards. And then in Europe, they started pressing for picture postcards. There had been pictorial envelopes and pictorial business cards and things like that, and people wanted a pictorial poster card. So it was first approved by various countries in Europe, and then it got to the United States in 1898. And That's what the back of a card would look like. Boy, isn't that serious? Authorized by Act of Congress, May 19th, 1898. And this side is exclusively for the address. That's all you could put back there. It was before they had divided backs. But the front of the card, oh man, look at that. They would put an image on there, and then they would shrink the image so that you could write a message on the front. And who recognizes that building? The main part of that building is still there. That's down on Lincoln Drive near Gypsy Lane. That was the Wissahickon Hall Hotel. Yep. And the message in this one also has a really cool part. It says in the middle, it says, I have had I have had some pleasant rides on the Wissahickon Drive, which is in Fairmount Park, which is perfectly beautiful. Have you had any drives yet? And there's lots of messages that show up like this on the Wissahickon postcards because it's the early, yeah, and the person's name is Squeezy. I didn't know her, so I don't know anything about her. But it was very common for people to say, I've been in an automobile ride. There's even one that I think we might see tonight that says, I was on a bicycle. And in the early 1900s, yeah, that was a big deal. And this was during what's called the golden age of postcards. And most postcard collectors and dealers refer to the golden age of roughly from 1898 until about 1914 or 15, towards the beginning of World War I. And during that time period, you can imagine people never having seen anything like this. And most people had never, you didn't have the internet. People didn't have access to books and magazines. Most people didn't have cameras yet. So to be able to buy something like this for a penny and send it anywhere in the United States for a penny and anywhere in the world for 2 cents, this was a really, really big deal. And the other thing that happened in 1898 was rural free delivery. Has anybody taken advantage of that? Yeah, rural free delivery. That was 1898. And that was an idea that was started by a guy whose name you might be familiar with from Philadelphia history, John Wanamaker. Our John Wanamaker became Postmaster General from 1898 to from 1889 to 1893. And during the time that he was Postmaster General, there was a lot of pressure put on the government to have free mail delivery everywhere in the country. And until 1898, when the rural free delivery system was patented, and you had to go into town. If you lived in a town with 10,000 or fewer people, you had to go into town to pick up your mail. They wouldn't deliver it to you. So anybody who lived out in the woods, on a farm, anything like that, the further you lived from town, the less opportunities you had to get your mail. And when they passed rural free delivery in 1898, that also was a really big deal. And that, combined with the introduction of picture postcards, it caused an explosion in the postcard industry. Nobody really kept track of the numbers, but it's been estimated that during that time period, there was up to 200 billion postcards bought and sold and collected and mailed here just in the United States. And there was more in other countries. And what people would do, they would buy them and either send them to their friends or family and with a message on there, oh, this is near my home or something like that. They would send them as birthday greetings or Christmas cards or whatever. But other things they would do is they started putting them in albums. And anybody that's been a postcard collector or a stamp collector or anything like that, you get an album. And what the postcard collectors would do, they would mount them in there. Unfortunately, they would glue them in. So if they got separated out, the backs are all messed up. But we're not going to see any of those tonight. What they would do is they would keep it on the coffee table at home. And when you invited friends over, they would come and look at your postcard collection. And you would look at theirs. They would bring theirs and you would maybe exchange cards. Oh, look at what I bought. Oh, look at what she bought. And one of the most famous postcard collectors of the time, Queen Victoria. Yeah, she had a very extensive collection and used to invite people to come and look at her postcards. So this is just one view of that. And we have other views of the same site. And look what happens when you add color to that. Isn't that gorgeous? And this one also has the only message with a quotation from scripture. Of the 2,000 or so cards I have in my collection, it says, the Lord is thy keeper, the Lord is thy shade upon thy right hand, and that's from Psalms 121. And it's the only religious message I've ever seen on any of the cards. And here we are at Valley Green Inn. And I put this one in not only just because I like it, but to set the tone for what a lot of the other cards are coming. And you can see that the inn doesn't necessarily look exactly like that, does it? And it actually tells you on the bottom that this is a facsimile, hand-painted nature view. And what would happen is most of the cards were published in Germany. The lithography and all the printing presses and everything was all done in Germany. There was only a few places in the United States that would do it. So during the golden age until World War I kicked in, almost all the cards were, the photograph would be photographed here, sent to Germany, and then it would be touched up by artists. And the artists could make it look like whatever they wanted it to look like. In this case, they shrunk what we call Forbidden Drive now. It looks like a single track footpath. And they had all those trees and flowers and everything that were growing on the other side. I doubt very much that they were there in the early 1900s. We've seen some real photos from that time, and that stuff wasn't there. This was all made up by the artist. But a really pretty card. And we have a couple other views of Valley Green and other hotels. So we're going to start by talking about some of the hotels that showed up in the Wissahickon postcards. By the time the postcards started becoming popular, late 1800s, early 1900s, some of the hotels that were along, like Lincoln Drive, the Maple Springs Inn, the Log Cabin Inn, the first Indian Rock Hotel up near the Looking West statue, those had all been torn down because Fairmount Park bought the land and put them out of business by not letting them sell alcohol. So by the time the postcard craze kicked in, most of those buildings were gone. But some of them were still here, and this was Valley Green Hotel. And this card was published by the same company that published this card. And my question is, what color was the roof? Was it red or was it green? And that's another example of how whoever painted the image would paint it in whatever image they wanted. And another image of Valley Green, and this is one that was where they took the message part of this on the front. And I don't know if you can read that, but it says Valley Green is up the beautiful Wissahickon. And this was put out by the Cummings coal offices. And they listed 3 particular addresses. And they say it's really good business to buy your winter coal now. And that was one of the uses for Wissahickon postcards, was for advertising. We're going to see more of that as we go along. Here's one of the other hotels, a really beautiful card. On the left is a scene of boating in the Wissahickon, and hold that thought, we're going to come back to that. But on the other side, on the right, is the second Indian Rock Hotel, which was at the foot of Monastery Avenue. If you're over in the Roxborough side here, Jeanette and Monastery come together at the bottom of Green Lane, and you would go all the way down the bottom of Monastery Avenue, and that's where that hotel was about 3 times the size of the original Indian Rock Hotel, and it was built for spite by the guy who had his first one torn down. And he said, wait a minute, I'm going to build this one that's 3 times as big, right like this far, just inches literally from the border of Fairmount Park along Forbidden Drive. And if you go down there now, you can't see any sign of it. There was no foundations, there was no basement or anything like that. But if you go down to that site now where Monastery Avenue ends at Forbidden Drive, there's a little picnic grove down there. There's some picnic tables. Hey, you've been down there? So yeah, that's where that hotel was. And this one was also published by the most famous of the international postcard publishers. Was a guy named Raphael Tuck. And he was known all over the world as like the ultimate beautiful postcard guy. And they had thousands of different views of all kinds of things. And this is one of the only ones that I've ever seen that Raphael Tuck did with pictures of the Wissahickon. And if you look at this, this was postmarked in 1904. And it's hard time. I have a hard time reading that message because it's in some foreign language. I don't know if anybody recognizes it. And what it probably was, here's the back of the card. It was probably in Swiss, and that card was mailed to Switzerland. And whoever bought the card bought it here mailed it from
you
Monticello,
chubby?
Wisconsin
Are you
to
chubby?
Switzerland, and it ended up back here in our Friends of the Wissahickon postcard collection.
Chubby
Pretty
too.
cool, huh? And you could see the
Chubby.
2-cent stamp. And again, you could buy these for a penny. You could send them anywhere in the United States and its possessions like Guam and Hawaii and places like that for a penny, and anywhere in the world for 2 cents. And there's another Wissahickon. Oh no, that's not a Wissahickon hotel, is it? No? Anybody know what that is? Hotel del Coronado?
Yeah.
It was in what movie? Some Like It Hot. It was the American Film Institute #1 comedy of all time. My favorite comedy movie. So that's why I threw this in. And if you remember, it was Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis were hiding from the gangsters because they had witnessed the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. And they dressed up in drag and joined an all-girls band that went to Miami. And they were going to do that to get away from the gangsters. Not the band, but Tony Curtis and Jack Lemmon. Well, they didn't want to take the film company, didn't want to go all the way from Hollywood to Miami. So they just went down to San Diego and they filmed the outside scenes there. And the hotel is still there. It's been renovated a couple times. And Mara, you're nodding. Have you been there? Last year. There you go. Yeah. So how was it? Did you like it?
Scaffolding. They're working on
They're
it.
working on it again. I think about every 30 years or so. So yeah. So now we're going to get into really beauty shots of the Wissahickon. And this is a series of cards that was done by the Rotograph Company up in New York. And most of these are scenes that were right down along the creek. And it's really hard to tell exactly where they were. But I'll bet you if you knew exactly where that was and you went there today, it would look almost exactly like it does in the picture, like 120 some years later. And it's got another very common message on the Wissahickon postcards. Don't you think this is pretty? Yeah. And this is the back of that one. And we'll show you some of the interesting facts of addresses and how you could get things delivered in those days. This one left Philadelphia and went to, is that Tisbury or Fisbury or something? What's the purple thing that's going on there, Claire? Oh, okay. Is it going to go away? Oh, I probably touched this by mistake.
No, it was
No.
a mess.
Oh, okay. All right. So was it a message of disapproval? Are they going to walk out on me already? Or all right. So this one was sent to Miss Hooper at the Boot Inn in Tisbury. I think that says Wills or Wilts, Wiltshire in England. And that's all you had to put for an address, and it would get there. Yeah, it was really cool. Try doing that today and see if it would make it there. And then here's another review, the same company, different place in the Wissahickon. Not sure exactly where that is, but it doesn't matter. It's really, really pretty. And the same company. And remember, these are all hand painted. There was a real photograph that went to Germany and came back. But these were obviously done by the same people, the same person, the same group of people, because they all use like the same color palette. And here's another one, and same company. And the message on this one, unlike most of the messages, this one's upside down and doesn't really say anything important, except over on the right-hand side there, it lists their return address as an RFD address. And now we have this one, very common message. Received your letter, will write later. Tell the others to write to me. From Edith. Yeah. And that's what you would normally say on a postcard, right? And now we have this the same company, and this is a card that was a real photograph, but it was mechanically reproduced in black and white. And what would happen is the photographer or the publisher would send the image to Germany, it would be in black and white, and then they would add color to it to make it look something like that. And how do you like the caption on this? Your Brandywine don't beat this. I love that one. Same card, same image, same publisher, but different tint to it. Here's one that's slightly different. Same card, again, just a little bit different, but I like the message. Lest you forget. I wonder what they were remembering, what they were doing down here that they didn't want to forget, right? And then another one, same card, And this message is to my little friend from Massa. All right, Philadelphia veterans. Who was Massa in Philadelphia history? Massa the gorilla. And I actually happen to know, I did some research on this one, and Massa got out of his cage one night, went over to the gift shop and bought this card and sent it to his little friend. And actually, no, that couldn't possibly happen because the card is like very early 1900s. Massa was born, I think, in 1930, came to the zoo in 35, and stayed there until 1984. He was 54 years old when he died of a stroke. And yeah, all of us who went there as younger people remember he was like the superstar of the Philadelphia Zoo. That I don't think he sent that card. And now we're going to look at some cards of something that you don't see in the Wissahickon very much anymore, and that's boating. Why don't you see much boating? There's a couple of major reasons. I don't know about that. Yeah, it may or may not be. No, Brad's shaking his head. I forgot to introduce Brad. Brad is my friend and fellow amateur Wissahickon historian and postcard collector. And he and I trade postcards all the time and trade questions and answers about, hey, Brad, what do you think about this? What do you know about this? And then he'll do the same thing with me. Brad and I are like identical twins that were born like 30 years apart. And I don't know much about biology, but yeah. The big difference is, though, that he's younger and smarter and better looking. But anyway, so what were the differences between now and back in the day? It may or may not be illegal to put boats in here. We see people with kayaks every once in a while. There's a lot less water nowadays, and that's because back in the early 1900s, when these cards were printed, especially in the upper part of the Wissahickon, up in Montgomery County, there was a lot more pervious land. There weren't all the impervious surfaces with roads and golf courses and shopping centers and paved parking lots and things like that. So now when the rain hits up there, you see the base flow when it hasn't rained for a while, and the Wissahickon will be raging for a day or two, and then it goes down just like when you flush the toilet. It goes up and it goes down. Back in the day, though, there was a lot more pervious surfaces up in Montgomery County, and the water would percolate down through the ground and come back up in natural springs, which formed the tributaries to the Wissahickon, which meant that the main body of the Wissahickon had a lot more water in it. It might have been as much as a foot deeper back in the day. And frankly, there's a lot more people that have boats back in those days. Nowadays, there's not a lot of people that have boats. I think kayaks are more common. Canoes maybe, but you don't see a lot of rowboats like that in Philadelphia anymore. But it was a very common sight back in the day, and there was a lot of postcards that showed images of that. If you look at these people, I don't know how much further they're going to be able to go. I think right after this, they turned around and headed back in the other direction. And then here's another really pretty site. This one, I do know the site. This is down near Gypsy Lane. Remember the hotel that we saw, the Wissahickon Hall earlier? The hotel will be on the right near where that horse and buggy is. And I know that because of that the fence and because of that row of trees on the left. It shows up in a lot of different views. So we know exactly where that was. And now here's another one with a boat in it, another really, really pretty card. And this also is Raphael Tuck. And you can see this is right upstream from here. That was the Hartwell Lane Bridge, which isn't there anymore. It's about a half mile. No, not even about a quarter mile upstream from here. And you can see the foundations for that, the rock piers, which are starting to crumble nowadays. But the bridge used to take Hartwell Lane from where Springside School is now. And that's now just a footpath, but that used to be a road that you could ride down on a horse or a horse and buggy or whatever, and eventually drive across there. And that was destroyed in a flood, but it showed up in one of the postcards here. And I like the caption on this. Do you see me in that boat? Not. Well, I guess it isn't me then, but it's a nice place anyway. And this is the back of that card, and you can see it's still saying in 1906, it's still saying private mailing card, authorized by act of Congress, and this side exclusively for address. 1906 was the last time that that was required. They took away that requirement, and then you wouldn't see that on that anymore. We have a question in the back, and I can take questions. Claire's going to tell me if we start running long, but what's your question? This one?
Yeah. Coat of arms.
Oh, yeah, that's the coat of arms of the city. Yes. I don't know. Any Latin experts here?
Let brotherly love continue.
Ah, okay. There you go.
It's the city's motto.
Yep. Thank you, Brad. And there's the back of that card. It was mailed in 1906, and this would be one of the last ones because that lettering wasn't required after that. Cheryl?
Where mail and letter.
No, just about everywhere. And that started in Europe. It started, depending on who you talk to, Germany, Austria, Hungary, France, places like that. And people were demanding a cheap way to send mail. And it started over there, and then it caught on over here. You know, we're always a little bit behind the rest of the world on things like that. So. And here's another picture of boating, and you know where that is? Yeah, that's down on Lincoln Drive. That's the Hermit Lane Bridge. That would be Lincoln Drive over on the right. The paved bike path or paved hiking path would be over on the left. But and the water there, I think, is deep enough right now you could still canoe in there, but not very far. And then we also have another one, the same bridge, and this one has 3 canoes in it. There's 2 here and 1 up on the other side. And at the time there, you can see some people very small on the left-hand side. You can see some picnic tables and benches and chairs and stuff. And there was an actual picnic pavilion over there that wasn't torn down until about 1996 or 97. It had been damaged in storms, and I was one of the people that helped remove it. And Ed Stainton, our former president of our board here, and the guy who founded our structures committee and the structures crew. And we have a couple of structures people here tonight, Paul, and who else is here tonight? George, yes, and Dean, right? So what Ed did was he got permission from the park. He was getting ready to rebuild all of the WPA structures up and down Forbidden Drive, including the warming sheds back here and the guard houses and the restrooms. And we got permission because that structure was in such bad condition. We got permission to tear it down, salvage a lot of the wood that was original WPA 1930s vintage, and then cut that up and use it to rebuild the remaining buildings. And unfortunately, I don't have a postcard view of that. But here's the back of that card, and the reason why I put this in was again because of the address. And this was as late as 1931, and all you had to say was Miss Alice Fielding, Ashland, Pennsylvania. You wouldn't need a street address. And when that got there, the post office would go, "Oh yeah, I know Alice," and they would make sure they got. And yeah, try doing that nowadays. And here's another view of that Hartwell Lane Bridge with the boating in there. And another really, really pretty card. This was put out by the Americans, I think the American Souvenir Card Company. Is that what that says, Brad? Yes. And you can see that also is in a foreign language. I think it's German. But here's the back of that card. And it was, you look at the postmark, this is 1899. It's one of the earliest postmarks that I have. And this was purchased and mailed from the National Export Exposition here in Philadelphia in 1899. And it was sent to Lydia, whoever that is, in Swanksville, Montgomery County. And she was staying at the Hotel Perkiomen. And the mail service, this turns up rather frequently. Mail service was so good that you could send a card to somebody that was staying like 2 or 3 days in a hotel, and it would get there before they checked out. And we also have a number, I don't think I brought any tonight. I had them in the first show 3 years ago. They were mailed to people who were in the hospital. And you could mail it today, and they would get it tomorrow. Or if you mailed it in the right part of the city at the right time of day, a lot of us gray-haired people remember there used to be twice a day mail deliveries and pickups in Philadelphia, and downtown in the business district 3 times a day. So you could mail a card like at 9 o'clock this morning, and it would get delivered at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And in the first show, I think I had one that said, I'll be home today on the like 4:30 train. Yeah, try doing that today. And there's one of the really pretty cards. Nice border that was hand drawn on there. And this is the Walnut Lane Bridge down by the golf course. And the caption says, largest concrete bridge in the world connecting Germantown with Roxborough. And if you look closely in the middle or towards the bottom there, you can see there's scaffolding on there. And this picture was taken and the card was printed and sold and sent before the bridge was even done. Everybody knew that it was going to be the largest concrete bridge in the world. So it was already famous, even though they were still working on it. Another really pretty view, and I don't think I've ever found the company that publishes these, but I know they were printed in Germany. On the back of this, it says printed in Germany. But they would have a combination of different views of real things plus what the artist enhanced. And this one shows down in the lower right-hand corner there, the Devil's Pool. And Devil's Pool was a very famous site for Wissahickon Postcards. I have a whole album. I have 30 albums in the collection, and there's one whole album that's nothing but different images of Devil's Pool. Another really interesting type of postcard. Looks three-dimensional, right? It's fake. It was just printed to look three-dimensional, and very clever for like the early 1900s. And you see the statue up in the top center there. That's the Looking West statue. And this is the back of it. And if you remember, you see the horse and the buggy there. And the writer says, here comes Maurice and a pony sleigh with Crawford driving. She is turning up toward the bridge and she looks fine. Let's have a good sleigh ride. I like that one. And this was just sent again, no street address, just sent to somebody out in media in Delaware County. Now, this one is not in the Wissahickon. We're going to start with, I think, about a half a dozen cards that are not in the Wissahickon, but this has to do with the founding of the Friends of the Wissahickon. There were two major problems in the early 1900s that led to our founding in 1924. One of them was the chestnut blight. Remember, the primary hardwood tree in the Wissahickon Valley was the chestnut, and they are gorgeous if you can find one, because they were pretty much wiped out all up and down the East Coast but throughout the early 1900s. The second reason that a lot of the trees were destroyed in the Wissahickon and led to the founding of the Wissahickon was two major ice storms within a few years of each other in the early 1900s. And this card I bought recently, it shows somewhere up in Germantown, but look at what the ice storm did to every tree on the block. And if you could imagine that happening to virtually every living tree in the Wissahickon, same storm, twice within about 5 years. So Friends of the Wissahickon were formed basically to get the city to, hey, come on, guys, we got to get on a program here, get rid of all these dead trees and start replanting a whole bunch of new ones. And within the first 6 years of our founding, by 1930, we had raised over $30,000 and spent that on 14,000 trees and shrubs that we paid to have planted all over the Wissahickon Valley, mostly because of ice storms like that. Now we got a couple of other non-Wissahickon postcards I threw in just for my own personal amusement. I hope you like them too. Who knows what that is? That's Horn and Hard Art down at 800 block of Chestnut, the world's largest automat. And remember how that worked? You see those fixtures around the sides there. You would go to there would be a nickel thrower at like a podium at the beginning, and you would walk in and give her like $1 and she would throw $1's worth of nickels at you, and you would scoop them up, and people would buy things in multiple of nickels back in those days. Sandwich, soup, sometimes even like hot meals. And here's the back of that card. And now you see by this time, it's starting to get a little softer on the back, right? This side is for address only instead of exclusively. And you don't have all that mumbo jumbo about, the act of Congress and everything. And this one is one of my favorite non-Wissahickon cards. You read the caption. That's the greatest dancing demonstration in America. Where the hell are the dancers? There's no dancers in there. I don't get it. But it's fun anyway. And then this one is one of the prettiest ones. Yes, go ahead. I don't know. No, it wasn't identified. No, actually, it's an auditorium someplace. Yeah, it's where they actually did dancing, but there's no dancers in the picture, and it wasn't identified as what it was. Yeah. Someday maybe somebody will know, but yeah, it looks like it could be in the subway, right? With those arches. And then this one I put in to illustrate the linen postcard era. Linen postcards are like 1930s to 1950s. And then during the 1950s, they started to be replaced by the chrome images like you see now. But back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, this was a new trend in postcards. And for some reason, they're not highly collectible. You can usually find these in somebody's like 10-cent box or 25-cent box. And you go through them and you can find some really cool cards sometimes because they're not highly desirable. Everybody wants things from the golden age of postcards, but they don't want these. And I love these because they took linen fibers and mixed them in with the paper. So it kind of had like a raised paper image on it. And it brought up these really fantastic colors. You notice the colors are a lot better than a lot of the other postcards, even the hand-painted ones. And this is the Orange Blossom Special, heading down to or from Florida. Yeah. Wish I had Johnny Cash to sing about that, but unfortunately. And then this one's a real photo of me. This is me being discharged from the hospital for the insane. I was being treated for my postcard obsessive compulsion. And actually, there are people who collect these. When you go to a collector show, they're organized by like states and views and towns and things. And then they're also organized by topics. And the dealers will all organize them by topics. And then you can come up and tell the dealer what you want. And I got this in a box of cards that said insane asylums. Yeah. And I thought I was nuts. All right, here we are back in the Wissahickon. And this is, Brad knows where this is. It's misidentified on there as the Devil's Pool. It's upstream from the Devil's Pool. Everybody know about Lake Surprise? Brad, you want to tell everybody about Lake Surprise and the dam that's still there?
Yeah, Lake Surprise is it's on Crescent Creek. It's probably 1.5 miles upstream from Devil's Pool. If you know where Buttercup Cottage is, so instead of crossing Crescent Valley Drive to go on to the Crescent Trail, make a left past Buttercup Cottage and take that trail. It's a connector trail and it just sort of fizzles out, but before it fizzles out, there is this dam, and the dam the dam will be on your left. It's the dam of Crescent Creek that was created for lakefront property in Chestnut Hill in the early 1900s. So this dam created.
Yeah, I'll repeat it. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Oh.
But you
I'll just repeat it. Brad's talking about Crescent Creek up near Crescent Valley Drive, where it goes under the SEPTA Bridge near what is that, Lincoln Drive? And yeah. And this is Lake Surprise. It was a dam and it backed up the water behind there. The dam has pretty much crumbled, but it's still there if you want to walk up and see it. And in this particular postcard, it was misidentified as Devil's Pool. But I also put this in here. Those of you that saw the first postcard show like 3 years ago, this was also in there because this same person sent 2 cards with different views. And what do you normally say? I was here. I loved it. Having a good time. Wish you were here. What does she write on there? Never saw this. And the same person sent another card to the same recipient at the same time with also, I never saw this either. Yeah. But then it's dated July of 07. And the message says, did you go to see the parade? 1907 was the 225th anniversary of the founding of Philadelphia when William Penn got here for the first time in 1682. And they had parades, like monster parades, like Phillies World Series parades, like every day. And you have to remember, back in that time, people didn't have television or the cameras or the internet to see a live parade with soldiers and marching bands and, all kinds of fraternal organizations and things. It was a really big deal. So this person said, did you go to see the parade? I didn't. I thought too much of my life to go to the parades. Another really, really pretty card. We're going to see several views of historic Rittenhouse Town. And this was the one that commemorated the 225th anniversary of the founding of Philadelphia. They had pictures of Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell and some other cards, but they stuck Historic Rittenhouse Town in there. And we're going to see that again coming up. I love this one. It's another message about autoing. Do come home and auto with us along this road. Yeah. And it was very common in those days. People would send a postcard and say, you know, have you been for a drive? Well, come with me. You can ride in the car. Now we have several different pictures of the Looking West statue, which was misidentified for many, many years as the Teddy Uskung statue. Teddy Uskung was a real person, but he probably never set foot in the Wissahickon. He was up like in the Berks County area. But it was misidentified starting with the unveiling, and it's been called Teddy Uskung or the Indian statue. And using modern terminology, Friends of the Wissahickon decided several years ago to call it by what it's supposed to be, and that's the Looking West statue. And the sculptor, John Massey Ryan, called it Looking West into the Setting Sun, where the rest of the Lenape people had gone there after they got cheated out of their land.
Excuse me, why is it there?
Why is it there? Oh, yeah. Okay. So the reason why it's there is because there was a guy named Reuben Sands that built the first Indian Rock Hotel right across from that. And that's where the Rex Avenue Bridge is now. And there's a WPA restroom there. Yeah. And Reuben Sands had somebody paint on a barn door an image of what he thought was a Lenape person. And he would charge you money to go up to the Indian Rock. And then that was replaced later by a carved wooden statue, and then in 1902 by this statue. And here's the back of that one. Again, just sent to Helen out in Lebanon, PA. No need for an address. Yep. And there's a really nice version. You can see this is definitely artist enhanced. I'm sure it didn't look exactly like that, even on the day the picture was taken. Look, probably more like that. That would be like what the original picture would look like when they sent it to be printed. And now we have a real photograph, and we're going to do a number of those towards the end of the show here. This is the home of David Rittenhouse, manufacturer of the first paper. Before David Rittenhouse was born in 1732, apparently there was no paper anywhere. And this really is the Rittenhouse homestead. David was born there. He only lived there for about 3 years before his family moved up to Montgomery County. So it's not his home, it's his birthplace. And he obviously was not the manufacturer of the first paper, but his great-grandfather, Wilhelm Rittinghausen, was the first person to make paper in the British North American colonies, and the mill was like right behind there along the Montashonee Creek. And here's another really rare Rittenhouse postcard. This was put out by the Rittenhouse Family Association in 1990, celebrating the 300th anniversary. And this was a first day cancellation, which is highly collectible. And why it was postmarked in New York, you'd think they do it in Germantown, right? Yeah, I have no idea. And another beautiful view of the bakehouse that's behind the homestead there at Rittenhouse Town. And this is done by local photographer and postcard publisher Melvin Chappelle. And is Melvin here tonight? I can't see everybody. No? You'll see Melvin at various FOW events, and you'll see him at like Mount Airy Day and other community events, and he'll be selling his photographs and postcards at those events. And this one, another one down along Lincoln Drive, along Wissahickon Creek. Or was it? There's the same view, same cars from Newtown, PA. Yeah, maybe, maybe not. That was pretty common back in the day. If you were a photographer, you could sell your original or negatives. You could sell it to anybody, and they could call it anything they wanted. As in this one is a lonely road in Wissahickon. And there's the back of it. And this shows how easy it was to mail things. This one was postmarked in Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania, and it was just marked to go to in the same town. So that person sent it to Miss Cora Schaefer Town. And when it got to the Elizabethtown post office, I said, oh yeah, this has to stay in town. Or was that image in the Wissahickon? Or was it over in West Park at Chamonix? Same view, but a different caption. And here we are back at Valley Green, and I put this one in because it shows how quickly the cards would turn around. The message is, dear whoever that is, expect Dr. So-and-so tomorrow afternoon, be sure and come. And if Dr. So-and-so was coming tomorrow afternoon, you'd text the person now. You wouldn't send them a postcard. It would take like 4 days to get there. And this one obviously is not in the Wissahickon, but I put it in for a reason. There were, in the early days of the golden age of postcards, before there were a lot of cars and trucks, the way to move mail quickly around the city or around the state or the country was by rail or by trolleys here within the city. And they had them in New York and Baltimore and other cities. And that shows you what the outside of the rail car looked like. And you can see on the right there what the inside looked like. Unfortunately, I don't have any pictures from the inside of trolleys, but it would be about the same. And the trolley would go around on its route and pick up mail. There would be people working in there, postmarking it and sorting it, and then it would get dropped off at the various post offices as the train or the trolley completed its route, and it would really speed up the process. And here's a Wissahickon card that I got just last November. Got kind of a common message. Here's one for your collection, and very common view of Valley Green and the Valley Green Bridge, but oh, the back. Look at the postmark up in the far right-hand corner there. That was postmarked on the Philadelphia and Manayunk, which was a trolley line. And it's hard to see, but right above the stamp there, it says RPO, and that's Railroad Post Office. So that was a card that was purchased somewhere near here, taken down probably into Manayunk, and went on to the trolley car, was postmarked there, went to New Haven, Connecticut, and ended up back here in our collection. More advertising cards, a really nice image, and I can see why the Stokes Seed Store, with their poultry supplies and so on, wanted to use that image as an advertising card. Here's another one, Path Near Devil's Pool on the front, kind of innocent, but then if you turn it over on the back, now they're selling trimmed hats as low as $1.98. Yeah, and that was from, I guess that's West Philly, 1469 North 60th Street. Yes. And here's another one that's got a whole bunch of misinformation on it. This is the Livesey House right up the street here, or right up the stream here, or downstream. And they say it was Washington's headquarters during the Battle of Germantown. It really wasn't. And it also says that it's a beautiful old mansion house occupied by the father of our country. That's a dirty lie. And then they advertised their product, the Enterprise Cherry Stoner, live easy and live better. Now, I wonder if that's a lie also. But here's what it looks like on the back. And I don't know if anybody's ever if you ever use these, maybe your grandparents used one, you would run the cherries through there and it would remove this, you'd crank it up. Paul knows about that. And you crank it up and you would squeeze the juices and the pulp and everything out, and you would use that to make preserves. And then here's another one, rather innocent front view. It could be anywhere in the Wissahickon, anywhere in the Fairmount Park, but nobody else has a gorge like that. And here's what the back looks like. Don't forget to include a pair of Friedman's shoes in your vacation. Yes, question. How far?
Keep going. There you go, hats trimmed.
Oh, hats trimmed? Yes.
My timing might be off. I haven't been down on Market Street for like 10, 15.
I know where you're going. Yep.
But on Lit Brothers.
Yes.
On the corner.
I will tell everybody about that
It used to say hats trimmed.
yeah, because they can't hear you on the speaker. But yes, Lit Brothers downtown at 8th and Market, they would say hats trimmed for free. I think if you bought your hat there, they would trim it with like ribbons or flowers or something like that. Yes.
Is it still there?
It might or might not. I don't anybody know. I haven't. It's still there. Brad says it's still there. Yes.
How about?
So now we're going to get into double wide cards, and hold your questions till the end, please. We're going to see how much time we have. These were cards that were two cards that were in a folder together, and you would open them up to see the view, and then you're going to see in a minute how you could fold them over and mail them. And these are some of my favorites. Remember, that's the same color palette as that Rotograph company that had really pretty cards. And that's down on Lincoln Drive again. That's that Wissahickon Hall Hotel, the very first card that we saw. And here's another card in their collection with the Hermit Lane Bridge. And here's the back of that one. And this would show you what it would be like. You would open it up, and in some cases, it would be an advertising card like this. And in other cases, you would write the address on one side, your message on the other side, fold it over, put a piece of Scotch tape on it, and mail it. And then the recipient would open it up and go, "Oh, wow, look at that." And these are pretty rare. You don't see very many of those. And excuse me? You got a street address in there, yeah. And this one's in there twice, and all I can say is I was drinking heavily that day. But and then here's the same company, double wide, black and white, but still a really pretty card. And this is the same view, Lover's Leap down on Lincoln Drive. And Valley Green Inn with looks like a rowboat in the water or a canoe and the bridge in the background. And here's another simple address and the message. I hope you will remember this view. It's just as beautiful now because they went down and improved the gravel and they regraded it on well, I guess it's Forbidden Drive now. And then we have souvenir folders. Anybody ever get one of those? You open it up and there's a whole bunch of things in there. This would include pictures of Independence Hall and the Liberty Bell and so on. And it also has a picture of Valley Green in there. And I've got about maybe 20 folders in my collection, and they have pictures of Valley Green, the Henry Avenue Bridge, the Walnut Lane Bridge, and a number of other places. Now we're getting into real photographers. And most of the time on the cards you've seen up till now, we couldn't identify the photographers. But now we can, and you see the photographer's name, Carl Lutz, Carl F. Lutz, down in the lower right-hand corner there. And Carl was born in 1896, but nobody knows when he died. It was probably mid-1900s, but he was most active during the 1930s and 40s. And he took literally thousands of views all over Philadelphia and published them, sold them, and he made them into postcards. And one dealer I went to had over 200 postcards from Mr. Lutz, including several from the Wissahickon, like this one. This is now in the 1930s when the Henry Avenue Bridge is over the Hermit Lane Bridge. Again, there's boating in there. And this one also, you can't tell by the front because this is a real photograph, probably one of a kind, and it's stamped by Mr. Lutz himself. Yeah. And then we're going to get into cards. This is that same view. Remember Devil's Pool? It's not Devil's Pool. This is the same spot. And these were published by a guy named Gustav Stortz. And Brad and I did some research on this guy. And the reason why we're able to pin it down, that's a real photograph. And that's probably his handwriting on there. And he stamped it with his business address. And then we know that's the same picture almost, but it's a slightly different color. So it's, again, one of a kind. And if you look really carefully down at the bottom there, he signed it. So that was signed by the photographer. And it's the only one that I know of that was actually in our collection. It's actually signed by the photographer. And now we're going to get into our next to the last grouping, and that is Germantown photographer Philip Moore. And Philip Moore was active in the early 1900s up until about 1958. Most of his cards that we have were printed in the very early 1900s during the Golden Age. And one of the things I liked about him was he put people and animals and things in most of his cards, not all of them. That could be almost anywhere along the Wissahickon. Another one down by the Walnut Lane Bridge. You see there's a guy that's standing, hopefully he's standing on a rock. And another Philip Moore card. This is from the Kitchens Lane Bridge. He's probably standing on the bridge looking out at the rock. You see the guy squatting there. And this is one of the few of his that doesn't have a person in it, but this is up in the Gresham Valley below the McCallum Street Bridge. If you're on the McCallum Street Bridge, you look downstream, and that's the site. And by the early 1900s, that was where the mill ruins were. All the mills had been torn down by that time. Here's another one, very similar to the other one that we saw with the overhanging rock. And here's one that's Spruce Mill Road. Nobody uses that name anymore. You know where it is? No, that's where the covered bridge is now, Thomas Mill Road. And the roads change names depending on who owned the mill. Yes. And here's another one. This is the Wissahickon. This is probably the McGargy Dam. That's a little bit upstream from here. That's also Philip Moore. Another one by Philip Moore. Not sure exactly where that one is. Could be almost anywhere. Here's one showing one of the old-fashioned benches. Another one probably taken from the Walnut Lane Bridge, looking out over the Wissahickon Creek from the Walnut Lane Bridge with a couple of people down in the lower section there. And here's one of Philip Moore's cards, but it shows how a real photographer could get ripped off. This was his, and look at this one, published by another company. He had nothing to do with that. See, it's exactly the same image. The car, the little girl and the woman in their Victorian dresses way back there on the bench, and the old Fairmount Park guard standing in the front. And that was Philip Moore's card. And somebody else took it and said, well, that'll work for me. I'll sell it too. And I don't even have to take the picture. And now we're getting into real photographs. These are one of a kind that Philip Moore did. And that was the Walnut Lane Bridge. And the reason I know this is because my friend and fellow postcard collector, Andrew Herman, who did a lecture here, I guess about 20 years ago when he released his Postcard Images of America book. He identified that as Philip Moore's actual handwriting. So yeah, so he actually touched that one. And this one, it just says Wissahickon Woods. I think it's up above Devil's Pool, but it could be right up here above Valley Green. You know, there's a little picnic pavilion up there too. Yeah, it could be the same one. I think it's Devil's Pool though. Here's another one that is up in the Gresham Valley. It's the Gresham Creek in winter, a real photograph, one of a kind. And now these are two different views of the Livesey house. It's or Glen Fern. It's right downstream from here. And he took these. You can recognize his handwriting. But here's one that he took, and he took this one a couple of years later when the house was fixed up. And you see it's got a whole bunch of improvements to the windows and that balcony and so on. And then I had this one in the collection for several years, and it just says Germantown, Wissahickon, and I didn't really have any idea where it was until last November when I saw this card, and you recognize those two trees? All right. The building in the background, you can just barely see the top of the building and the chimney, and you can see the low-hanging building. That's Thomas Mansion with the greenhouse that did you know that? Did you recognize that? No? Okay. That's Thomas Mansion, where I've been headquartered ever since I started working for the park in 1998. And we still lead our service days out of there, including one today. And that is a one-of-a-kind. I've been looking for a Thomas Mansion card for like 34 years and finally found one. And now I'm going to turn it over to Brad again. Brad, if you could come up to the microphone here and tell everybody about the last 5 cards here.
This is one of the latest projects that we collaborated on, FOW and myself. So for the last about 10 years, I've had the privilege of working with FOW, providing photography for what it started off doing the Instagram account in 2016. So I ran the FOW Instagram account from 2016 until the middle of summer of 2023. But in the time since then, we've also done like the calendars that you get every year. And there's something else I'm blanking on too. But oh yeah, the map. So, well, yeah, the map does have photography on it. So the latest the pocket map, that was I was so stoked to do that because I've loved maps since I was a little kid, and that was just, I don't know, that was like a dream project. But these the postcards, I had been kind of leaning on that, like, hey, we should do postcards too. David Bauer loves postcards. I love postcards. And FOW has historically had postcards, but it had been a long time since any were produced. So last year, leading into the holidays, for the annual year-end, giving campaign, we put these together, and with the help of Claire and Sarah Marley and Pauline, we narrowed it down to one for each of the 4 seasons, and then a 5th wild card. So that's how we ended up with this, and we went down to the specifics of what the font of Greetings from the Wissahickon, like what that said. And so that's like where we settled on, was just like, keep it simple. Greetings from the Wissahickon. That font I think it's called National Forest. It riffs off of
that's appropriate.
Yeah, like the U.S. Forest Service signs, the wooden ones.
And just like Philip Moore, there's people in this one, and I'm going to guess that one is summer.
That one, yeah, that one is the summer.
And I think I can get this one too. That's winter, and that's out by Devil's Pool. And this is fall by the Fingerspan Bridge, right? And another one from fall. And probably another one from summer or spring.
Springtime.
Spring,
Yeah, that's in May. And this one is in the Gresham Valley on the Mount Airy side. Sean is here somewhere. Sean will attest that this is the best place in Wissahickon. We have done the research. It's below McCallum Street as you're heading toward the White Trail and Devil's Pool, and it's the part where it kind of goes off from Gresham Creek and up into the woods under the pines, the eastern white pines that are there. And there's so much shade, there's so many ferns, and it is the quietest place in Philadelphia. I mean, it's quiet. It's awesome. Highly recommend.
Thank you, Brad. And we have these
Dave?
for sale tonight. Some of you, when you registered, I was told there were 9 people that bought a set of these for what, $25? And you picked them up when you came in. We also have more sets for sale if you want to buy them. And we're also throwing in a bonus view of that very first view, the James Peale Philadelphia Art Museum card. You get one of those free if you buy the other 5. So, and that's all of my prepared remarks, except for thank yous. I want to say thank you to Claire Brennan. Thank you. Claire, raise your hand. Yeah, thank you to Claire. She's the person that put this all together. If you depended on me to do the technology end of it, you'd be out of luck. Thank you to Sarah for a really nice introduction. Thank you to FOW for welcoming me to become part of this group 34 years ago now. I went to my first board meeting. I was invited in 1995 or 96. And I will say to you the same thing I told the board that night. It's an honor and a privilege to be welcome to be among such a wonderful group of people, including all of you. Thank you for everything that you do for the Wissahickon. Thank you.
Some parks at Fairmount Park. What's the division of the relationship between Fairmount?
Okay, so the original, yeah, go ahead.
So the question was, some of the cards say Fairmount Park, and so you want to know the distinction between Fairmount Park and the Wissahickon.
The lines are blurred because when Fairmount Park was first founded in 1867, it was just along the river drives. That was known as Fairmount Park. It was named after the Fairmount, which is the mound on which the art museum is now built. Going back to William Penn's day, if you stood and you looked all the way up and down the watershed there, that was the Fairmount. So it became Fairmount Park when it was first founded in 1867, just on both sides of the river. And then later on, right up till this very day, they keep adding new parcels of land now and then. It's any part of the park system, including the Wissahickon watershed, the Delaware estuary down in South Philly, Tacony Park watershed, Pennypack watershed, all the neighborhood parks. That's all the Fairmount Park system, which is now managed by Philadelphia Parks and Recreation. You got that? There'll be a quiz on that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Philadelphia now has more park area than any other city in the world.
That was it.
That's a question.
Does Philadelphia now have more park land than any other city in the world? Brad, do you know the answer?
Right.
It's not any city in the world, and it's all in how you measure it. But in the United States, we now have about 12,000 acres, including the parks and recreation sites, that's managed by Parks and Recreation. And there is no city in the United States that has that many acres of parkland managed by the city. There are some other cities that have national parks, state parks, county parks, things like that. But if you measure it that way, parks managed by the city that they're in, Philadelphia has more parkland than anybody in the United States.
But not the world.
But not the world, no.
And the Wissahickon is 2,040 acres of that.
Thank you.
Certainly.
Okay.
So where do people buy these postcards?
They would buy them. Oh, the question is, where would people buy postcards? You buy them anywhere. The real photographs, you could buy them right out here in the woods. Or you could buy them on a street corner or on the boardwalk at Atlantic City. They had cameras that would take a picture, and instead of making a negative that would have to go back to a shop and a dark room to be developed, it would just use a process to make that postcard image right there, right in front of you in about 10 minutes. And then you could get that one of a kind card. You could also buy them in drugstores. Five and dime stores. Everybody remember those? Kresge's and Woolworths and places like that. Any place that sold newspapers. And there were certain small stores that just sold nothing but postcards. At a penny a piece, they could make a living and pay the rent and make a profit selling postcards. You get them anywhere. Yeah. Yes. Yep. Yeah. When you look through the Philadelphia boxes at the dealers show, they're broken down into categories, and there'll be a lot of categories for like patriotic and like City Hall and the First Mint and things like that. But then there can be very often a whole category just for Fairmount Park, and some of them even have just for the Wissahickon. But it was very popular to come up here because you think about the gorge, the stream, the views, the vegetation, the rocks and everything. There's no place else in Philadelphia that looks like this. So if somebody was looking for nature views, this is where they would come. There's very, very few postcard views of anything in the Tacony watershed or Pennypack or any of the other watershed parks. Good question. Thank you.
Yeah.
When I've been to the Museum of Art, American Collections, a couple paintings of Lenny Lenape leaders, and they don't look anything like that used to. So the explanation of why this native person has a.
Do you want to take that one?
Looks like.
Or do you want to throw it to Brad?
Well, I can first to repeat the question. There are depictions of Lenny Lenape in the Philadelphia Museum of Art and other places, and they look nothing like the replication in Looking West, and it's because it's not a Lenny Lenape wardrobe. And so I think
I was going to throw it to Brad, but he's too far away from the microphone. So basically what it is the sculptor, John Massey Rind, took an image of a Plains Indian with the headdress and the other clothing and so on. And he just thought that, they all dressed alike. And that's what he put up there. Yes. Go ahead, Brad. Come on up.
Yeah, so
Come on in. We'll get all cuddly up here.
The additional context for that is you have to put yourself in that time frame. So 1890 was when the Wounded Knee Massacre happened, and that was sort of like the final battle of the final conquest of the U.S. Army of natives across the continent, and so that was still fresh. So the Looking West statue was installed in 1902, I believe, and John Massey Rind created that out of marble, but it was a facsimile of a statue that he had already done. So in Hartford, Connecticut, there is a fountain where the state capitol is. The state capitol sits up on a hill, and if you look down the hill, there's this big there's a fountain, and I believe it's a woman that's on top. But there are 4 natives in different positions going around, and it's all bronze. And it's that exact sculpture that is up there, that it's one of those 4. And so when he did those, and that sculpture is from 1898. And so that's only 8 years after Wounded Knee. And newspapers had pictures of, from out west, from the battlefields and what they look like. And when you picture what the peace negotiations look like, the leaders, the chiefs, they would come in their full dress, and Plains Indians wore the big feather the feather headdress. And so that kind of informed that style of art at that time. And so that is kind of by extension how we ended up with that figure here in the Wissahickon.
It's called Looking West because he's looking 2,000 miles to meet with his brothers.
Pretty much, yeah.
You want to repeat that? Yeah.
You just commented that it's called Looking West because he's looking out for his actual home as portrayed. Any other questions from the audience? Yes.
Well, while we're talking about the natives, where were the Lenape at that time?
The question was, where were the Lenape at that time?
Well, there's still a few Lenape that are in the area. As a matter of fact, one of them was on the Friends of the Wissahickon board. I don't know if he still is.
Not right now.
Not right now. But he and some of his some of the members of his tribe gave a lecture here a couple of years ago to talk about their modern history. But there weren't very many of them here in Philadelphia at all. From all the historical records that I've seen, probably no more than maybe 20,000 in the whole region. And definitely not a lot of them in the Wissahickon. They didn't live here. They probably lived up on the flat land, like up in what's now Roxborough or Chestnut Hill, Mount Airy, Germantown. We know that they came down here and they hunted and fished and trapped and things like that. But as far as them living here or having Indian councils up on that council rock where the statue is, no, that never happened. And the last of the treaties that I know of was 1757, I think, when the Lenape finally gave up all the land in the Philadelphia area and kept moving west. And they started moving out like into central Pennsylvania and they ended up far out like in the far Midwest. Yes, yep. That's where Teddy-Uskong was. Yeah, he was up in that area. And I think there's a lake up there and a park named Teddy-Uskong. Yes.
Any other questions?
Do we have online questions?
Not right now.
No? Oh, okay.
All right. Well, thank you all so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.